College visits are a highlight of the process. You get to walk the campus, feel the energy, maybe grab a cookie. But a visit often shows you the best version of the school, well lit, welcoming, and carefully curated. It's not like they're trying to be misleading, it's just the school is putting their best foot forward, sort of like students do in their applications. So I'm all for doing a visit. I'm all for the official tour. The trick is learning to enjoy that Instagram version and also look behind it.
It's the College Talk Show. Today's theme, visiting colleges, with special guest, Stephanie Meade. And now, here's your host, Chris Bell.
Visiting a college is exciting, and when you go, and more importantly, why you're there, makes all the difference. Today we're going to talk about 3 types of visits, and then we're going to dig in on the second type, which I think is the most important. Type 1 I call the early exploration visits. These happen freshman or sophomore year, and your goal is really just to get a sense of what a college campus even feels like. What is it? I call these casual visits. You can do it while you're on vacation and you're driving through a college town, or maybe you go to the school down the street or in the next town over. You're trying to get a sense of different types of schools, different prototypes. So you'll want to visit a large public research university. You'll want to visit a small private liberal arts school. Get a sense of the different feel of these schools. This is all about exposure. It's more vibes than verdicts right now. Maybe you determine that you want Starbucks and a quad. Maybe you determine that you want something else. This is the time to get a sense of that kind of thing. The second type of visit is what I call the list building visit. And this is the one that's the most important in my opinion and what we're mainly focusing on today. It typically happens during junior year, and your goal is to evaluate, could I actually see myself here? Visit shifts from casual to strategic. You're testing your research using the real life evaluation of the vibe on campus. You are approaching the school already with thoughts about pros and cons and questions that you might have about the school, and you're getting a sense of, are those true? Are your conclusions accurate? So you've prepped up and then you visit the school. That's the second type of visit and what we're going to talk about primarily today. There is a third type of visit that I also want to briefly mention, and that's your final decision visit. These are a blast, of course, because you're doing it in your senior year after you have the admission decision in hand. Maybe you're evaluating 2 or 3 or 4 different colleges that you're accepted to, and you're trying to decide which one you'll go to. It's really fun to go during admitted student days because the college is pulling out all the stops to give you swag and make you love the school. And you're meeting potential classmates, people who might be at that school with you. So it's a fun time. It's also a fun time because the power has shifted completely. You're not wanting the college to say yes to you. They've already done that. They are wanting you to say yes to them. So it's kind of like a time when you're just really evaluating things and you get to sit in the driver's seat. Here are some tips about your visit, and then we'll hear from Stephanie Meade. When you visit, you want to document each visit. These colleges, they'll all blend together after a while, so pull out your phone and take pictures of things that will help you remember this school. Take notes if you want. And then really for me, one of my most important tips that I say is write down 3 words to describe your sense of the school. So it's not a full reflection, it's just to get a snapshot of your visit. And what you're really trying to get at is words that will transport you back to that visit. So maybe after a visit, you'd write something like green, friendly, confusing. And each of those words would evoke something that you will remember about your visit. Sometimes it's even more helpful than pages of notes. So all visits are valuable, but for today, we're zeroing in on that list building visit. That's the one where the most potential for reflection happens and aha moments. So you'll have a chance to really shape your list with those visits.
This episode is brought to you by Bell College Consulting. Visit bellcollegeconsulting.com to learn more.
Welcome back. Stephanie Meade is an independent educational consultant based in LA and founder of Collegiate Edge, where she offers custom college guidance to students and families. She's visited hundreds of campuses and has guided students and families through every kind of college visit, from cross-country tours to quick local stops. I've asked her to share what students should be noticing, asking, and thinking about during their visits, and how to cut through the noise and find clarity. Stephanie, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much, Chris. I am delighted to be here, and I love this topic, so I'm excited to have this conversation.
Well, wonderful. If you're good with it, let's just jump in. I mean, this topic of visiting colleges, what's the purpose? Why should students and families want to visit? What should they take away from the experience, ideally?
So I think it's important to remember that college visits do not replace research. They are just one facet of research. Sometimes I hear families say, we got to start visiting colleges. We got to start setting some priorities and figuring out what the student wants. And I would argue that that work should be done ahead of time to as great an extent as possible. Where you're starting with the student. Who is the student and what do they want? Here's what I think a visit can and should do, is to add value to beyond what can be determined from research. So that's things like the kind of intangible feel of the student body, really figuring out who's there. Again, some research resources will give you a description of the student body, but that only takes you so far. And I really trust that the instinct, particularly of the student and of the parents also, to know when they see this student body that's a fit. And students often report to me, I went to this campus and I saw so many people that I could be friends with. Or maybe they went to a campus that I thought was a great fit for them and I thought they would find their people, and they come back and say, just didn't see anyone who seemed like they'd be a friend. And that to me has value, even though maybe it's not the kind of concrete data point. We also like that intangible. So I think that's really important. Campuses are like any community. The setting has its own vibe and feel and flavor. So to me, that's what the visit is for. After the student has narrowed down somewhat what they're looking for, has identified some colleges through their research, to then really refine their feelings about these different campuses and to be able to compare and contrast them from one another beyond just the data that they can look up.
How about you? When you visit campuses, I mean, you visited so many. What are some things you personally look for when you step onto a campus?
So a lot of the things I already described, really looking at the students. Of course, I'm listening to the tour guide when I'm on the tour, but I'm also kind of scanning the background. What do the students look like? What are they wearing? Do they walk together to class? Are a lot of people walking alone with headphones in? Do they look excited? Do they look exhausted? Do they look stressed? So really those kinds of observations can be more powerful than all the little factoids you're going to be fed. I also recommend that students read bulletin boards and look for posted, what is going on? Do you see a lot of political events? Do you see a lot of arts events? Do you see a lot of LGBTQ events? Do you see a lot of sports events? What is it that you're seeing? What is it telling you about how students spend their time? And this is a very old-fashioned notion, but most colleges still have printed newspapers. And you'll often see them in stacks. And I'm a big fan of reading those newspapers, which of course you can also do online, because you will hear about things going on that campus that no tour guide will ever tell you. And I love, of course, the dining hall, because that's where you can see students interacting. You can see whether they tend to self-segregate and buy whatever. It can be activities, it can be socioeconomic, it can be racial, it can be whatever, and just see what that dynamic feels like. for. I also would say I look and see if the campus feels well maintained.
Mm.
Um, and that's not always a deal breaker for me if it's not. I'm thinking of a campus visit I was on recently, and before we went out on tour, they said, you're going to see some deferred maintenance. And that's because we have made a decision that we're building 2 new departments and we hired 10 new faculty. And I love that because they said, this is what you're seeing as our priorities. So maybe a building that needs a coat of paint isn't necessarily mean the school has problems, but I think those can be things you can ask questions about.
Amazing. That's great. I mean, rich advice. This is already transforming, I think, the advice about go on a student tour, go on an information session. But I hear you that it's a commercial message. How do you balance the commercial, pitch?
Well, that's
Yeah.
a great question. And I think in an ideal world, they do the information session and the tour because yes, there's a lot of sales going on, but also you'll learn some interesting things. There might be new academic programs that haven't been written about yet, or you may have the opportunity. And to me, one of the most valuable parts of going on a tour is you get to talk to a real student. So you may have the opportunity to ask some very important questions that you might not be comfortable asking an admissions officer. And just a little tip, make sure you sign in. It's really important for the college to know you were there because some
Good point.
colleges care about how you demonstrate interest in them. But I also encourage families to schedule their tours so that they have some unstructured time while they are on campus. And I encourage them to wander around. As you know, Chris, it's pretty easy to wander around college campuses. Most
Yeah.
people will leave you alone. Find where the students are hanging out and also to just go up and talk to people. Imagine that you're having lunch outside at your high school and a nervous little student and their parent comes up to you and says, can you tell me a little about the school? Wouldn't you be happy to answer their questions?
Ideally, do you have a thought about how much time a student and family should spend for a college visit?
I think in a perfect world, and this sounds like a lot, 4 hours, three and a half, because it's usually about an hour for the info session and an hour for a tour. And then that gives you an unhurried amount of time to poke around a little bit. And maybe there are also specific things you want to see that you didn't see on the tour, like a theater student who didn't get to see the theater, or a chemistry student who wants to see the labs. I think also families don't realize that they can make appointments to talk to people when they're on campus, whether it's a coach, a music teacher, perhaps somebody in the academic department that the student is considering. Maybe it's financial aid, maybe it's disability support services.
Kind of wrapping up, I just wonder if you have any. I mean, you've told us so many good stories already, but do you have a favorite visit story or a moment where something really clicked for a student that you haven't talked about yet that you'd like to share?
One of my favorite stories was the following. I worked with a student, and she was the third one in the family that I worked with, so I knew the family well. And there was a particular university that was kind of on a pedestal in this family. And her older brother had gone there. She really wanted to go there. It was kind of the only school. And when she went and toured a bunch of other schools, she came back and said, I realized that I could be happy at many different campuses. And I give the student a lot of credit for going into those visits with an open mind so that she could let that herself be affected by what she was seeing. But it completely shifted and opened up her college search. She ended up at a school that was very different from the school, the wish school, and is delighted. In fact, I'm going to have coffee with her next week.
Oh,
And
that's
then just my
wonderful.
last little idea that I want to leave you. I want students and families to tour campuses with the mindset of a discerning customer. Because I think, especially early in the process, it's different when students are, because sometimes students tour after they've been accepted and they're trying to make a final decision. That's different. When you're touring before you've applied or been accepted, I think sometimes students and families go on campuses feeling a little fearful and they're really afraid of doing something wrong, saying something wrong. They think they're being evaluated. They're not. And I want to encourage them to be tire kickers, if you will, and again, this goes back to my first point about research. I want them to go to campus really well prepared, knowing what their concerns are and asking the hard questions. You're shopping for a very expensive item. And I think that mindset shift helps students walk onto those campuses more empowered to learn what they need to learn and less just feeling afraid that they might do something wrong. And I think that changes what they're able to learn in just immeasurably.
That is a takeaway right there. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you for all the advice. If folks wanted to get in touch with you, how would they find you?
Collegiateedge.com. We're
Great.
located in Los Angeles, but my team and I work with students all over. But yeah, just go onto the website, take a peek around, fill out the contact form. I'd be happy to hear from any friend of yours, Chris.
Thank you very much. Isn't she amazing? This is Stephanie. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me. Stick around, we'll be right back. This is the part of the show where I highlight some of the key points from earlier in the show. It's kind of a summary of the key takeaways, but we call it Top Tips.
Top tips. Top tips. Kind of a summary, but we call it top tips. Top tips.
Here we go. Your top 10 tips for college visits. Number 10. Include unstructured time on campus. Number 9, talk to the tour guide. Number 8, don't worry, you are not being evaluated. Number 7, sign in at the admissions office. Number 6, do the official info session and tour. Number 5, read bulletin boards and school newspapers. Number 4, look at the students. Number 3, make appointments with people you might want to talk to. Number 2, research the college ahead of time. And your number 1 tip for visiting colleges, be a discerning customer. And that's the College Visits Show. Thank you again to Stephanie Meade. And remember, college is awesome.